Thank you everyone for being in this space today. If you are here, that means you're interested in a candidate roundtable. If you don't know what I'm talking about, nor did not sign up for this, you can either stay with us and have an amazing conversation and experience, or you can leave, but we hope you stay. Just letting everyone know, as people are coming in, just two big rules to just keep in mind. The first one is, well, three rules. If in the event that we do get Zoom attacked, bombed, interrupted, this Zoom meeting will immediately end, and we will send out further communication about next steps about the session. Secondly, if you are a candidate and you do not want your employer to know that you are in the space because we are doing a recording, you feel free and feel empowered to shut off your camera so your employer does not know you're in this space. But equally so, if you do not care and you are fine and feel confident in this space, leave your camera on and we will embrace it, either option. Without further ado, I think what I'm really excited about is this topic. I like all the topics, but there's something about this topic like speaks to me. Going through the job search process is a stressful one. And I think just alone today, Nikia, I think in some of our virtual spaces, people were talking about finding support, right? That this it's been hard for them to find community. And so one thing that we thought that would be very important is talk about the roles of lifelines. How do you find support and create support systems during this process? And so without further ado, and to make sure I stop talking, I'm going to pass it to Nikia and Justin for this great session.
Hey everyone. First of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic day. I know that TPE's first day is today, and so congrats on going through the process. It's super stressful, and so we all understand that. And so just again, thank you for joining us. Nikia and I think this is an incredibly important topic, and you'll see why throughout the presentation, hopefully. And also thank you to the TPE Planning Committee for giving us the opportunity to present on this and have an opportunity to share. Like Christian said, Nikia and I are here to talk about lifelines, how to identify them, and plan for, and how to help make a plan for those lifelines to support you over the next couple of months while you're going through the job search process. As you know, it's a lot. It's going to be up and downs. It's going to be rejection. There's going to be successes, and you're going to want people around you to celebrate or process or vent with those, right? Two notes before we get started. Obviously, there are closed captionings on the bottom, so you can keep them on or you can turn them off. It's up to you. And two, please have something to write with around you. I know you'll probably be taking notes all day from interviews and whatnot. So you're going to be drawing something soon. You don't have to be artistic, you're not sharing it, but just for your notes and keep safe. And additionally, we hope that you enjoy our pixelated pictures throughout the presentation, courtesy of whatever version of the iPhone we had in 2013 to 2015, as Nikia and I took a lot of pictures and stuff. So with that, I'm going to share the presentation really fast. Just let me get set up. And we will get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. It is a joy to both be in this space with you and to be in the space with all of you wonderful folks. If you see me looking this way, I have a separate device where I can see all of your beautiful faces or headshots. If we were in person at TPE, we would be around a big table or collections of tables, really creating that sense of community and having a dialogue. So I'm trying to recreate that by seeing all of your faces at the same time. As Justin said, my name is Nikia B Campbell. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. A little bit about who I am, so that frames the context by which I bring this information to you today. I currently serve as a senior college persistence advisor at a nonprofit called SEO Scholars. Really quickly, we serve a little over 1,000 college students across the country who began as New York City high school students. We provide them with personal, academic, and career counseling, and each person in my role serves about 60 to 75 of those students. Our students are across the country at institutions you've heard of, University of Chicago, MIT, USC, and everywhere in between. And I'm so grateful to be higher ed adjacent, but still very much engaged in this space. I have over a decade of experience in student affairs. I have some institutions that I've been affiliated with listed there: University of North Florida, UNC Greensboro, et cetera, et cetera. If those are institutions that resonate with you or that you've heard of, you can kind of see where I've made my professional footprint along the way. We also have our strengths quest listed, if that is something that you jive with. My top 5 perfectly articulate who I am as a human being. And just for some additional context, as far as functional areas that I've been connected to: housing and residence life, academic advising, multicultural affairs, and then more indirectly, conduct, leadership, and graduate student programming. Justin?
Thanks, Nikia. Appreciate it. So I currently, my name is Justin Shreve. Formerly, I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm currently as an assistant director for residence education at Old Dominion University. It's in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm over all first-year areas on campus and more, a little bit more right now. I have been working in student affairs for just right at a decade now, which is crazy to think about. And some of our previous institutions were Virginia Commonwealth University, where I served 4 years as a hall director, the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where I met the wonderful Nikia Barnes Campbell on this call, and thus the blue and gold as well, because that was our meeting spot and birth of a great relationship. And then the University of the Pacific and Gopher College, which is where I did 2 years prior to going to grad school as a hall director professionally. I also have my strengths here, and like Nikia said, these perfectly outline who we are and what our conversation with us will look like and what we're going to get excited about. But also in this, we hope to kind of bring a little bit of a family feeling to the conversation, because it is virtual, and if it was roundtable, I think there'll be a lot more chemistry in the room, right? But Nikia and I also love to talk about the relationship, our beginnings, and how important support and mentorship is. So yeah. And so the goal of this presentation today is, like we've kind of said a little bit here and there, is one, to work on identifying those lifelines by, one, anticipating the needs you have going through the job search, and then two, looking at how to identify those people in some way, shape, or form, or structure, and then planning to have them support you, because it's a process, and then also at the end, how you can also support yourself through this. So yeah.
So what do we mean when we say a lifeline? You can, if you feel so inclined, to maybe put some things in the chat that resonate with you when you think about lifeline. For us, we thought of it in the sense of, who is a person or a creature, maybe a pet, with whom provides you with some sort of life, some sort of breath, some sort of restoration, some sort of insight, something that helps you to gain a sense of self, recalibrate, all those things that, quote, give you life. Lifelines may look different. Not every lifeline is going to be the same, but I think that generalized terminology is just an acknowledgement that this person or this creature plays a key role in your life, whether it's personally or professionally, that allows you to redirect or gain insight in a very specific or particular way, outside of what you just might have with just a general old friend. For our conversation today, what's really cool about Justin and I is we have been each other's lifelines for the better part of 8 years. We haven't always served in the same role. The lifeline hasn't always looked the same. But the dynamic of how our relationship has changed will hopefully help to illustrate some of the concepts that we're sharing today. I'll share a quick story about the first time Justin was a lifeline for me. It was the second day of pro staff training at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. I had been there for 2 days. And on the second day, for our pro staff retreat, we were taken to a river and instructed to canoe this river for 4 hours. I don't know if I had been in a canoe at this point. I can't recollect, but I knew that I wasn't very excited about this. Being new, I didn't know anyone, right? So my second day, and I'm like, I had to spend 4 hours in a canoe with someone brand new. I was pretty nervous. And the day before, Justin and I had gelled a little bit. We had had some conversations. And when we got there and we found out this is what was happening, I immediately tapped into just my gut, and it said, go for Justin. So I screamed, Justin, would you like to be my partner? He obliged. And we canoed on this river together for 4 hours. He did most of the work, so he was literally my lifeline. I cannot swim well, so without Justin and his paddling, I may not be before you today. I say that to say that in that moment, our relationship is not what it is now, but it was very clear to me that he served a special and unique role in that situation that I didn't want to have anyone else serving in that role. A part of my comfort with him was the transition of being in a new space. But it was also knowing that he saw something in me already and I saw something in him already that allowed us to be a mutually supportive system for each other as we were both new to that space. And we made it. We're here today, thanks to Justin's canoeing.
Nikia said we were brand new. I was a brand new graduate student, she being a brand new professional at UNCG, and didn't know anyone. Obviously, there was some type of magnetism, that gut feeling that we knew what we were doing. But I felt like a fish in a huge ocean of unknown going through a new professional field. And she assumed a lot about what I could do that day. Because the river just happened to be in my hometown. And she was like, oh, Justin's been on canoe before. He's been down this river. Incorrect. She assumed a lot, but and Nikia also, after that awesome moment, and many Michael Jackson songs we tried to make to figure out what to canoe to. She saw a lot of potential in me, and she probably a little bit of distress as well. But either way, she picked up on something and kind of took me under her wing, and honestly contributed most of my success over the last 8 years to her mentorship through those critical 2 years in our relationship since. And so with that, we're going to go through the presentation. And we'll, like I said, we'll utilize our relationship to make examples just because we're both here and can consent to that information. And yeah, so hopefully that has set a stage for where we're going.
So when we talk about anticipating the needs of your support, we just want to pause and remind you how critical it is. It isn't just beneficial to have a lifeline, right? You have to be able to anticipate what you may need so that you can identify those lifelines effectively. So when I think about anticipating my own needs, I love the 8 dimensions of wellness as a framework. It really allows me to break my life down into components, and then in each of those components, make an assessment about what those needs may be. If you're not familiar, you've got things like social wellness, emotional wellness, physical wellness, intellectual wellness, environmental wellness, financial wellness. So when I am thinking about a job search and anticipating what needs I have and how folks may be able to support me, I'm thinking about all those internal pieces and how through those buckets, I can really pinpoint, these are the needs that I may have. Here's what I need to anticipate as it relates to these different buckets of my holistic wellness.
And then to add another framework, because Nikia and I are all about theories and framework all the time, and acronyms apparently too, so what Nikia just talked about really helps you focus internally and gives you a framework of starting to structure what you may need or plan to need in this process, right? There's an external piece of that of finding those people who can support you. And so to kind of framework that external piece, using professional love languages is kind of easy, and most of us are probably familiar with it. And so if you think about it, when you're thinking for people to support you, and you're looking at all the 5 different types of love languages, either they be affirmations, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, or physical touch, all those are you're going to need every single one of those from different people throughout this process. And so if you need examples of like, I don't know what this person give as we go through the conversation, be thinking about that, right? And so like, maybe your person needs affirmations of like, someone just gave me a lifesavers and it says, I'm here, I'm just a call away, right? Or acts of service of someone just like, hey, I went and walked your dog for you because I know you're stressed out today. Or receiving gifts like Nikia, when we were in TPE in New Orleans back in 2015, she gave me a little pinata that was a unicorn because she was like, you're going to stand out, and it was full of peppermints, and it was just really cute. And I still have that in my office every day. Or like quality time, grabbing lunch or coffee or dinner with someone just to process, or like not have to think about professionalism and job search, right? Or just physical touch, right? If you are a person who gives hugs and needs that from people, figure out who can give you that during this time. So yeah, so using love language is also moving forward to kind of identify the external pieces to that. So with that said, I want to ask a question. I'm gonna unshare the screen so we can have more of a roundtable like talk at least. So what are some types or examples, of what stress looks like through the student affairs job search, right? You are going to it. Today is first day of a lot of days, and it's just the beginning. And so just to kind of throw it out there, you can put in the chat, you can unmute yourself if you want. It's up to you, but just give us some examples of what does stress look like, what's stress inducing for you during this process.
Well, I guess I could start. I guess one of the things that was stressful is really kind of preparing for the interview, doing well during the interview, then kind of reflecting over it, and then waiting to hear the outcome. So I guess just the whole interview process can be stressful in itself. But I have to say that Nikia was a lifeline for me, Christian, and also my coach. They just helped me reflect and get some advice and support during the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing some stuff in the chat, interview anticipations and expectations, like Shakara just said, so true. A lot of people searching, so a few jobs. That competition is real, right? And a lot of, like on this call right now, you're our competition, but at the end of the day, like there's humanity there too, right? And then hope you're making the right choice. Oh, so real. And you get that call and you're like, okay, I have an offer sitting on the table. What do I do in the next 2 days? I have waiting on two other institutions. What do I do? Oh, yes, Christian, good point. Being vulnerable and putting yourself in front of so many different people. If you're that person on the call that has 92 interviews for TPE, bless you, first of all. Second of all, that's a lot, right? Like, it's exhausting. And so, and then, yeah, and trying to be balancing your authentic self versus what you think that school wants to see. I would argue be your authentic self as much as possible. And then find the right fit in a limited job market. Yes, it is difficult right now, right? But knowing that everything happens for a reason. And why am I counseling y'all? We got this. You have great people. We're gonna identify who's gonna help you with that. Handling rejection, that is inevitable. There's going to be, everyone on this call is going to get a call of rejection or no call, right? You're not going to hear any information, and sitting in that limbo of not knowing is incredibly stressful for sure. Yes, lots of hurry up and wait. Jules, great point. Yes, and Chandra, good points. Yes.
And I want to bounce back really quickly to one. I think Gabby said, am I being too picky? I think that is also one that aligns well with this idea of holding out and choices, and is the first job supposed to suck? Am I just supposed to do it and take it, or am I supposed to wait for something that aligns more closely with my dream job? So absolutely.
And it's hard because you're basing everything off of a few interactions, right? Just a couple of interviews, and you're supposed to make a whole life decision. So yeah, so lots of daunting pieces to this, not to stress you out further, but we're starting the conversation by showing that you're not alone in what you're feeling right now, right? So please know that we understand and we see that, and hopefully we're going to help you find some people in your life that can help out with this too.
Awesome. And I will note that these were better than all the other examples that I came up with. I think some of the ones that that you all didn't mention that I'll just throw out, and you can feel free to use your reaction buttons, give a hand wave or a thumbs up. I thought about some of the financial stress that is involved. So you can use a reaction if you had to purchase clothing to interview during this season. You bought something new, interview clothes aren't free. I see those reactions. If you had to change or alter the space that you're conducting interviews in, I've got my fancy background behind me, but if it wasn't there, you see a giant picture of my wedding and a broom and wonder what's going on back there, right? So, and then if you had to purchase any equipment, like a headset for interviews, or, shut the door, maybe you had to buy a whole new computer. So recognizing too, in addition to the wonderful things that you all have shared, for many of us, financial burdens, among the fact that we're in the middle of COVID, definitely impact some of the stresses you receive, and when you're thinking about who can support you through that.
I think also a lot of y'all talked about the limbo pieces and the specific job, but there's a lot of emotionality that goes with this too. And so all the like waves of doubt and like confidence that you get where people are like boosting you up and you're like, that interview went great. And then the next interview is not so great. And you're like, oh, I'm a horrible professional. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And so finding a steady like homeostasis of confidence in there that's healthy and humble is really difficult, but it takes a lot of emotional support from you and around you to kind of keep you there and keep you kind of held up. So great points, y'all. Thank you so much for interacting with that. I'm going to go back to sharing screen. So it feels like I'm like pulling the human connection. I hate it. But here we go. So next we have this.
Awesome. So in identifying your support systems, we want to remind you that it's really important that you ask yourself some pretty critical questions. When you're preparing to engage these potential stakeholders, right? Because your support system is a stakeholder in your process. You have to be reflective. So when's the last time you spoke to this person? What does your engagement look like with this person? What version of you do they know? If this is a person that you had many interactions with as your freshman and sophomore year of undergrad, maybe there's some updates that need to happen so that they can understand what it may look like to effectively support you and be a part of that system. Some typical stakeholders that you'll see, peers, that's everyone in this room, right? You all are peers, you're going through this process together. And even though folks may not be at your current institution, they are in this TPE space with you. They are your peers. Mentors, this may be informal or formal mentors. Formal mentors, folks that you regularly check in with. They provide you with some clear ideas for professional growth and development. And maybe informal mentors. I consider an informal mentor to include folks with whom you watch from afar. Maybe they're, you fangirl or fanboy them. They are someone with whom you watch how they move. And you say, that's the type of student affairs professional I want to be. I want to model those types of behaviors. Sponsors, the really quick way to explain what a sponsor is, similar to a mentor, but more so transactional compared to the transformational interaction you may have with a mentor. Sponsors are your voice in a room in which you are not occupying. So they are advocating for you. They are creating space for you in spaces that you are not in. So they may be at your institution. They may be at, where you're interested in going to. They may not even be an official reference for you, right? But there's someone who can bring up your name and say, I think he, she, they would be a great person for this role, this position, this initiative. And then you have your supervisors. These are current supervisors, former supervisors. These are people who have been officially assigned to make assessments and evaluations about the work that you do. They may be also your mentors. They may also be your sponsors, but these are folks who our field has decided are folks who can reputatively speak to the type of work that you've done and with whom know maybe more intimately how you've grown and developed in your ability to perform the tasks associated with your roles.
So great points, Nikia. Thank you. And so perfectly said. If I would have had that section, I would have struggled explaining all that. Thank you. So we're going to move to an activity really quickly and take about 2 minutes to do it. And I'm going to give a visual, and it's going to be my best representation as not an artist to show you what I'm thinking of in a virtual format without being able to give you a handout, right? And so some of you may have done like a board of or directors activity in the past. This is similar, but not the exact same. And so we decided to call it your circles because one, it's more inclusive because you're leading your life and these are the people that you think are really important to you, right? And so on the piece of paper that I asked you to have ready to go, I want you to kind of draw something similar that looks at this. Now, before you start drawing, let me explain so you don't mess up. So you have in the middle, this big blue dot is you. And you have two circles. The first circle is orange, second circle being yellow. Those are your two rings of people. You can make more rings if you want, just depending on what you need. Within your first circle, I want you to put circles with people's names in them that are your ride or dies. These are people like at a moment's notice, you can text them, call them, and within the day or the next morning, they're able to get back to you and talk to you, process you, support you, however you need it. And so for me, like if I was giving examples, Nikia would absolutely be in this as my mentor / friend, my best friend Dennis, and my mom, right? So those are three people that I know I can call at any moment and they are ready to go. And then in your second circle, put as many circles as you need, by the way. Like, I'm not telling you 3 or 4 or whatever. It's up to you. You may just have one person there. You may have many. So in the second circle, these are the kind of the roles that Nikia just kind of talked through, right? The peers, mentors, the supervisors, or sponsors, those people that are most likely in your professional network that can speak to the work that you do, and kind of you can get in touch with them like on a weekly basis, right? Like, so in a couple of days, yeah, like, can we schedule a meeting for lunch to talk about my resume or those kind of things? And so these could be your faculty members, your advisors, your supervisors, but and so we want to give you 2 minutes just to kind of think about like who around you in your first circle, who are those people and who are those people in the second circle. Draw this to the best of your ability. Like I said, you're not sharing this. You may talk through it, but you're not sharing it. So no artistic judgment whatsoever. So anyway, so draw this out, put as many people in either circle, that's up to you. And then after you do those people, you'll see the squares. And that's going to be a place where you're going to jot down some notes about each person moving forward in the activity. So take about 2 minutes to do that, please. And I cannot see the chat because I'm sharing this, but
Got you. Shout out to Amelia Marie because she made a note of what each circle is for and gave some examples for folks in case they need to reference back to it. So thank you for that, Amelia Marie. And then we got a shout out. Someone had to leave for another meeting, but they thanked us so much for resources in our conversation. And just a reminder to you all, this conversation is recorded. So should you want to return back to it or share it with the folks in your circles, feel free to do so. It'll be posted on the TPE YouTube page, likely tomorrow or the day after, so you can check it out there.
So if you need, I'm going to take this down, stop share to switch screens real fast. But if you need to see this, take a picture with your phone or whatnot if you haven't already finished drawing it. I'm going to give you all 10 seconds to do that. So while we're doing that, I'm going to also bring up a word cloud, and I'll explain that as you're filling out your assignment. So feel free to not listen to me for 2 seconds if you need to focus. So for those of you who are like, I know my people, and you're still working, that's totally okay. We still have a minute or so to work through some stuff. What we're looking for now is, if you haven't used a poll everywhere, you can either go to the website or you can just text the information that's at the top of the screen. And what we're looking for is look for like, not names of people, right? Like, I don't know who Margaret is or Ruth, right? But positions of people. So either be a parent or a best friend or a mentor. If you don't mind submitting a couple of responses of who are those supports for you, just so that everyone in the group can kind of see where everyone's support systems lie. So again, take your time. I'm going to leave this stuff while people are completing what they're doing. These could also be titles, right? Like chancellor or dean students, like if you have a connection there, or advisors. Going to give you about 30 more seconds to kind of think about your first round of people that are lifelines for you. Before we move on, just in the interest of time, we're more so wanting to give you a structure to kind of reflect through and think through. We're getting a lot of really good responses. We're seeing parents, lots of friends, mentors, partners, supervisors, coaches, wonderful, sisters, oh, yay, family. Sorority, great. Using that professional network for what it should be, right? That lifeline for sure. Lots of lifelines within a sorority. Professor, great. I often feel like people forget academics or faculty members can be great resources because they've also been in the field. Cats, yay! Emotional support animals are beautiful. I know my dog has been critical for me. Great, friends and colleagues. Awesome, this is great, y'all. Keep building it, you're good. As we wait for other people to finish their stuff. Seeing some titles, great. Oh, your mentee, yes, you learn just as much from your mentee as you do your mentor. Good job. That's a perfect example. It's never like someone who you've had an impact on to remind you of that, right? Cool. So in the interest of time, I'm going to stop share here, and so we can continue with the presentation. Just give me 2 seconds to reshare things.
And if you're not familiar with how word cloud works, as individuals submit the same response, it reflects that by enlarging those words. So we could see in the larger words, there a theme among all of you all that maybe you're sharing some of these lifelines, acknowledging that you may not use the same lifeline for the same thing, but you've identified those as folks who are in your support system.
The dialogue box is right over the button I need to press. Sorry. There we go. And we're back. So thanks for participating in that. Again, make sure you have these, remember that like just connecting these squares and the diagram moving forward for the next little bit of the activity.
So as we think about how your support system can aid you, you've now created this, these circles, right? And I think that sometimes we forget about the importance of being intentional when it comes to our support systems. So we challenge you to engage in some intentional critical reflection. Not everyone in your support system is going to provide you with the same round of support on the same thing. And I think when it comes to intentionality, it's being really honest with yourself about who in my circle provides me with what. Say you go on an interview and you accidentally say that there are 15 vectors in Chickering, when we all know that there are less than that. And maybe after the interview, you feel pretty devastated. So you call mom and say, you know, Mom, I'm really teary-eyed. I said that there were 15 vectors in Chickering. Mom may be able to provide some comfort, right? And some support, give you a physical or virtual hug. But she may not even really know who the heck Chickering is and why that's relevant. So identifying that mom plays a role in that. The flip side of that is maybe you call a mentor afterwards and tell a similar story. Maybe your mentor doesn't necessarily provide you with the same hug and virtual love and hugs and kisses as mom, but they talk you through how we all can make mistakes about theory. There are many theories, and how your ability to apply the theory may be overlooked by you accidentally saying there are 8 more vectors than there are. So as you think through this intentional critical self-reflection, I think it's also important to think about the dynamics of these relationships. So how your support system will support you also is impacted by how you have engaged and nurtured in that relationship. Just because someone is your supervisor doesn't mean that they're inherently going to be able to provide the level of support that you would assume that a supervisor would. So how are you being critically reflective about how you're engaging in these conversations with the support system? As we lead into an activity that Justin is going to do, I challenge you to both spend some time with the document you just created, but even after this presentation, really continue to reflect. I think that sometimes we see ourselves one way and we don't intentionally critically reflect about how others see us through their eyes. And it's important to understand how people experience you and see you so that you can make sure that the support that you are seeking is the way in which they'll be able to provide that. Justin?
Thank you. So remember the little squares I just talked about? So in those squares connected to each person, what I would like for us to think through is that challenge and support, right? Our favorite theory, the most broad theory, the most general theory, and the theory that in a lot of ways we all use on a daily basis. But we don't always apply that to ourselves. And so for each person that you have within your rings, so in your first ring and your second ring, I want you to kind of like draw that dotted line and just draw a square. And within that square, I want you to write ways in which that person can challenge you and ways in which that person can support you. And I'll give you an example. And so for me, I know that if I need, I like to do social justice work, right? And so a white male doing social justice work, me and Nikia have had a ton of conversations around navigating those spaces. And so I know that I can go to Nikia and be like, all right, like, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me process this? But then, so I know that she's going to support me in that way, but I also know that Nikia is going to challenge me to be like, have you really thought about yourself and all the work that you have to do right now? Because you were up till midnight last night and working on this presentation but not doing the work that you said you had to do that's due next week, right? And so I know that she's going to hold me accountable and kind of act like a micromanager friend for me when I really need it, because that's where micromanaging is important. But another example of my best friend, Dennis, I know that I can go to him and he will, because he worked with me for 4 years, he will remind me of the kind of professional I am when I'm feeling down or just doubt my abilities or whatever. He's like, Justin, here's your impact. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've had students come to me about your impact, right? So like he can remind me of that, but also he's not afraid to challenge me and be like, you're being super dramatic and extra about your response and how passionate you're getting about this, right? And so in the job search process, people that you identified are going to be able to challenge and support you in the ways that you need. Sometimes you need someone just to enable you when you just heard rejection and not be like, yeah, you really messed up with that interview. Maybe it's just, okay, yeah, it wasn't meant to be, right? Like someone's going to comfort you and not give it to you too realistically. But then you also need those people who are going to challenge you and not just enable you the entire time, because those people care about your success and they care about your development. So we can't identify that for you. So we try to give as much direction as we can without being vague, but take a minute or so to jot down a couple of notes about each person, about how they can challenge you and how they can support you. And I'm gonna unshare just so we can see each other's faces. And if anyone wants to share, feel free to share like how, like, you don't have to say their name or whatever, but like, this is my supervisor and like, I know this is the way they can support me and this is the way they can challenge me.
I can go.
Christian?
So for me, he's been my best friend since Michigan State. We pledged a fraternity together, and I think his name is Ben. And what I appreciate from Ben is, when you have friends who are very similar to you, it's very easy to be very like-minded and agree to everything. Ben actually is almost like 50-50 me, like 50% we oftentimes agrees, but as a friend, he does challenge me when I'm not in the right or when I need to think of things differently. And I think about that in terms of when friends can do that or when supervisors do that, they do it from a place of care. May that be to challenge you because they want the best for you, or challenge you because they want to see you grow. And so my person is Ben from my fraternity.
Thanks, Christian. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. My name's Eleanor. I use she, her pronouns. Someone that I picked was my old hall director from undergrad. Her name's Janae. I love her so much. One thing that she supports me with is that she sees me for me. And what I mean by that is understanding like my values, what makes me a human being, all authenticity and validity. She gives me that. It's great. One thing she challenges me to do is to go deeper with my insecurities, with my confidence concerns, especially with interviews. What do you mean by that? tell me more about this. Where is this coming from? And then she's able to validate me in those areas of concern and give me some confidence to make sure that I'm not worrying about that so much.
Yes, thanks, Eleanor. Appreciate that. Love, 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 Janae. So that's so true to her. So thank you for sharing, Eleanor. Anyone else before we move on? Go ahead.
I'll share. I'm writing a thesis right now. My name's Amelia Marie, and my thesis advisor does a great job of challenging any of my assumptions that make it into my paper. And she does a great job of supporting me by actually providing step-by-step next steps for me to do. Because sometimes it's hard to get out of the big picture mindset and get down to the little next steps. So I really appreciate her.
Yeah, that's I love someone who can balance that out for you, right? I'm very big picture, and there's a lot of people who are like very task oriented, so it's great to have that balance back and forth. So we're gonna move on with time. Does anyone else need time jotting down notes, or do they feel comfortable where they're at right now? Cool. So what we just also did was, as we segue into our next point, is we just gave you some talking points to talk with that person about, because if you want support, you have to also plan for that, right? You can't just assume someone's going to know who you are or what you need, or they know who you are, obviously, but not what you need. They're not mind readers, neither are you. And so we just gave you some talking points of what to talk to that person about and bring it up. I'm gonna give you an example because I did this a couple of years ago with the past supervisor when I was going through a job search for this level, and I pulled up the old email. So if it gives you good language, great. So in my email, I wrote to them, I said, I did some reflection about how you support me on a daily basis and appreciate your support in helping me navigate professional politics and also challenge me to prioritize myself through all the work we do. While I'm going through the job search process, would you be willing to meet to talk about negotiations in the professional world and also help me shift work around so I can feel successful here and in my process? And so that kind of communication is incredibly important. And if you plan for people to support you, that's even better, right? And so you might be thinking it's too late, right? Well, TP's already started. These are just your first and second round interviews. You're still going to have on campuses, quote unquote, that you still have to go through. And that's where it gets really tough, right? Because that's where the limbo starts and everything else. Now you're like an exciting, like, I'm getting used to this day, right? But it just gets a little more difficult from here. And again, not to stress you out, but that's why we plan for support to be there for us when it does. So you're building your safety net. And so in those notes that you jotted down, craft some language in an email or a text or what have you, or in person, to say like, hey, I've really appreciated getting to know you over the semester, professor, whatever. Can we get coffee next week to talk about theoretical approach? Because I don't know my framework for leadership and how I supervise, right? Like, great conversation right then and there. Or there's plenty of other examples. I could spend all day talking about them. But plan to communicate and and use the notes that you just took as a starting place for that conversation.
One thing I'll also add to that, Justin, is how it's helpful for the people who are your stakeholders. If you're one of my mentees, there are many things that I can probably support you with very effectively, right? And if you want a specific thing for me to target in my support of you, if you say that up front, I then can focus and narrow my energy in that space. If you're like, oh, Nikia, I just want your support with the job search, then I'm going to give you a little bit of support in a whole bunch of things. But if you specifically say, I want you to rip my resume apart, I want you to destroy my cover letter, build it back up, and make it seem like I can walk on water, sure. Now I know how to allocate my energy effectively and acknowledge that maybe you're getting other things from other people, and this is where I need you right now, Nikia. So as much more helpful if you can articulate that upfront to your stakeholders so they know what they're signing up to in being a part of your lifeline.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, for sure. And then if you are struggling, right? And so some people that would typically support you may be going through stuff in their life, right? Your first circle may be a little empty right now, or you'd be like, everyone is going through stuff in the world right now, right? And so if you feel like you don't have that network around you, the beautiful thing about this is that you're also paying to be a part of experience with TPE, and we recognize that too. And so when you sign for TPE, you're also joining a network of professionals that truly cares about the job search process. Having gone through it, they're planning for it. They're planning for it to be efficient. People on this call, like Nikia and Christian and Lori, I think. And so knowing that those people are here and planning this entire experience for you with all the work that goes into it, it's not a magic wand of a wave of a magic wand process, right? And so those people care. They want to be here for you, and they're volunteering their time, majority of them are, to make sure that this is a good process for you. And so just know that you have a network of professionals as a safety net built into the placement exchange.
So how then do you tap into this magic network of professionals? Just a reminder about some key TPE resources that we have. Candidate roundtables like the one that you're experiencing right now. This is a space for you to both connect with us as presenters, but also connect with each other. If you feel like you need more peers or you're interested or somebody said something you were really jazzing with what they said or you dig the background, all of the above. You all can use the chat as a space to share LinkedIn information or social media handles or however you choose to use that space so that you can connect with each other as we would have if we were in person. Candidate coaching is a phenomenal resource that we want to make sure that you know that you can take advantage of. It's a chance for you to have 20 to 25 minutes with a seasoned professional, and they can engage you in any topic as relates to your job search. You bring to the table what you want to discuss. You can sign up for candidate coaching by visiting the candidate newsletter that you received today in your inbox. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's a little blue button that says sign up for coaching. You click on that button and it'll populate a sign up genius, where you can sign up for coaching. Coaching happens Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And some coaches are open to having conversations after TPE concludes. That's fine too. So we want to make sure that you know that you have access to seasoned professionals who are eager and willing to support. And then we have the candidate workroom space. So this is a virtual space where you can come, hang out, build community, ask random questions. We're happy to engage and have conversations with you in that space, and then share our information, and maybe we can talk online or offline or after if you have specific questions you'd like for us to help you dig deeper with. So all that to say, if you felt like you didn't have a network, you have one now just because you're in this space. And TPE is excited to be the vehicle to get you connected with those things.
You also have me and Nikia now. So we took time today to invest in y'all. So please feel free to reach out to us. Once I stop sharing screen, I will share our LinkedIn links in the chat, and also it'll be on the last slide too. But we are willing to help out, reach out to us. We know this is a stressful process, having gone through it several times. And so, yeah, you do have a network of people, but also in supporting yourself, it is critically important that you're not just relying on everyone around you, that you're also investing time in yourself as well. And so with that, we want to kind of give some wrap up thoughts. I know we're getting close to time. And so for me, just some tips. You're about to ask a lot of people to support you and help you out, right? But don't forget that is borrowed energy from them. You need to give that energy back to them if you want to maintain that relationship moving forward. And so please don't just be that person that's constantly taking from other people's cups. Make sure you're filling up their cups as well when you can. Now it's okay to be selfish now. It's okay to invest in yourself and focus on what you need to do and amp yourself up. But be prepared to give that energy back to those people if you want the relationship to build. That's what happened with Nikia and I. So 2 years of mentorship to grad school, and then through the job search, and then our relationship has come so incredibly dynamic throughout the years, and we've been each other's lifeline in so many different ways. And so just know that if you invest and you have a responsibility to do that, people will pour back into you, and it's incredibly important that you do so.
Well said, Justin. Ditto. So in the last few minutes we have, we invite you to share any questions or thoughts that you have with us. If you have to drop out to head off to something, that's 100% okay. But we'll be here till the end of time, not the end of time, to answer any questions or reflect on any thoughts you have. So Justin has shared our LinkedIn information in the chat. We don't share it just for show. We legit want you to connect with us if you feel like that'd be helpful. When folks tell you that reach out to me, reach out to them. When folks say, here's my LinkedIn, connect with me, connect with them. You never know what someone is willing to do for you unless you give them an opportunity to do so. So absolutely. With that, questions, reflection, thoughts?
I have a question for y'all.
Yeah.
So I think when we're in this process, right, of interviewing and job searching and having to identify lifelines, when would you say, as an individual, it's that time to contact your lifeline? I know it will look different based on person, but do you have, from your personal experience, that you can share when we should recognize when we may need to contact someone for support?
Gotcha. And I don't know if we made this clear. A lifeline is not always an emergency. You know, if you're housing a residence life, there are duty calls that are lockouts, and there are duty calls that the building's on fire, right? But it's still a duty call. So I think when you think about lifelines, it's how are you creating opportunities to intentionally engage with folks throughout your process? Your job search process cannot only happen in your head. You have to partner with other folks who have either been in your shoes or who are going through what you're going through, so you can make sure you're being both internally reflective and then have someone to bounce some of those reflections off of. So even if you feel like you had a really phenomenal interview, I still say it may be cool to reach out to a lifeline and say, I think I had a really great interview. Let's just process it. They can then ask questions. Well, what made it feel good? Well, what made it not feel good? Funny story. When I interviewed at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, I never thought I would take the job. I had another interview at a bigger name institution, and I was like, oh, I'll go because it seems like it's cool. And it took a mentor reflecting back to me that everything that UNCG is providing is exactly what you told me you wanted several months ago in a job. Help me understand why you're not saying yes. And that conversation showed me, wow, this is the institution I actually want to be at and can thrive at. Had I not had that conversation, I would have went somewhere else. I never would have met Justin, wouldn't have been on the canoe. None of that would have happened. So all that to say, it doesn't mean that you're in crisis. It means that you should just actively be engaged in conversation with these lifelines.
Absolutely. I think I would pick up there too and say that it's both a proactive approach and a reactive approach, right? And so what we just talked to today helps you identify, if you probably already knew, right? But like structure a way in which you can be proactive about reaching out to your lifelines and building that safety net under you for when you do fall and it becomes reactive. And so to Chris's point, I think there's a point in my experience, I'm like, okay, I'm about to go into a job search. I know that I'm going to start reaching out to people, reforming these connections. There's people I haven't talked to in 5 years, but there's those low maintenance friends or mentors that are like, hey, good friends, good, great. Hi, how are you doing? It's been a long time. Let's catch and like here I'm about to go through this process, right? But it's because I invested in those relationships back then, and so that's a proactive piece. But then there's a reactive piece of it's hard to identify mental health, right? And so like a lot of times finding our homeostasis of where we are and doubting ourselves, our confidence, or especially if mental health, anxiety, and depression play into that. Knowing who you are going through a job search process is incredibly important. And knowing that this is going to be, or this is going to, I'm going to need like 4 days by myself after I go to 2 campuses, right? Or TPE. It's the knowing yourself, but knowing people that are going to give you that, especially if you have a partner, and having that conversation around space and energy of like extroverts are going to be exhausted too, but introverts, you're going to need a lot of space. And so your partner might be like, I haven't seen you in space, let's go. It's okay to be like, no. No, I'm not. I just can't. And not take that offensively, right? And so have those conversations in advance, but also that way when you do react to them, you're ready to react to them, and people are there to support you. You're not alone in that process.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. We appreciate you all being here with us. We look forward to connecting with you offline. And it's been an absolute joy to be in this conversation with you.
Absolutely. Thank you all. I appreciate your time, and good luck in the process through this week. Take all the energy, find your space, do the list, be holistic, eat some bad food because it makes you feel good. That's okay. Whatever you need to do. Calories don't count during TPE, or they do if it makes you feel groggy. I don't care. But just do what you need to do, and know you have a lot of people behind you, and you're not alone. So please do that and activate your life.
Awesome, Christian. You can close us out with any announcements you have.
Just a few, not that many that people aren't aware of. Again, thank you presenters for being here today and talking about this topic. We do have a roundtable tomorrow. It was the one that was rescheduled. The one for yesterday is rescheduled on Fridays. Or sorry, I lied. We have a roundtable. I have my days behind by one. Tomorrow's Thursday. We have a roundtable tomorrow about applying what you're learning from one interview to the next. On Friday, we are taking the session that happened yesterday and moving it to there since we had to close it out. So thank you for being here in the space. Thank you for being amazing. You are meant for success. And if you need anything, let us know. We are here for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikia and
Bye,
Justin.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.